Yeah, this is a good one. I actually really like this episode, and it's a shame that it has relatively little impact in the future, because this is some fun stuff. I especially like the bit, "This is a clear act of treachery. They must be punished." To which the response comes, "Well, no, no, it's just, you have the loyalty of the troops. They just feel like you're putting their lives in danger needlessly." To which he says, "Of course you're right. Some clones are just defective. They don't submit to authority. Therefore, no court-martial. Just execute them immediately." Now, here's the interesting thing to me. By this point, we obviously know that Krell is evil, and that becomes really, really apparent in this episode, as he abandons all pretense and starts laughing maniacally as he cuts down troopers just for fun, so yeah. But what I find most interesting is immediately after his statement, the first thing we see is Fives and... I still can't remember his name. Hardcase, I want to say. Saying, yeah, well, I guess this is what we got into. And we see them submitting to authority. Like, they make a bit of vocal protest, obviously, but at the same time, what they do is submit to authority. It's like, And then there's this really great series of scenes. These are probably two of the most powerful scenes I've seen so far in this show, in my opinion. First, he gives that impassioned plea. And note one of the things he points out is that we are not droids, which I just mentioned because A, it shows kind of the bias against droids, and B, shows specifically the clone bias against droids. The idea that, we are not programmed to do this, that kind of thing. But I bring that up because he gives this impassioned plea, and, he's like, fire! Dogma is like, fire! They shoot and don't miss, and then they all just drop their guns. And Rex is proud of them. I don't know if this is all staged, but I like to think that it wasn't. I like to think that Rex was willing to go through with this to see if his men were willing to go through with this. And they weren't. And you could just feel the pride gushing out of him at the fact that they refused to submit to this order. I like that. And then Dogma's like, "No, you don't understand, we have to do this." Then we have what is, in my opinion, the most powerful scene we've had to date in the Clone Wars. My opinion, of course. It's when the clones are fighting the other clones. And as soon as they're like, "We can't see the enemy," it just clicked instantly. First time I was watching this. It's just, oh no. And then, they give the thing, or remember, they could be wearing our uniforms, disguising themselves as us. And it's just like, oh my god. Oh, and that moment of realization as he sees the other clone who's shot, and he just starts running out, screaming, flings his helmet off. "No, no, stop!" The whole scene was really well done, as the clones just are like, hang on, hang on. There's this one, he's lining up for a shot, and his spotter is like, whoa, 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 whoa! I like this because it's actually within the realm of possibility that the Separatists could actually infiltrate them with clones, but there's just such an automatic bond of loyalty and brotherhood between the clones that their very first knee-jerk, instinctual reaction to seeing another clone, even if they have orders to kill that clone, is to not do it. It's actually one of the things that makes the clones most dangerous, actually, is you can't really turn them on each other. Not really. Not unless you really push for it or do specific circumstances. So they it's like, oh god, and they pulled the things, and everyone starts pulling their helmets off, and it's like... And there's just this scene as one by one they all take off their helmets, and they're all just looking at each other aghast. Not just because of the fact that they've been betrayed like this, which is obviously horrible, but at the fact that they've been killing their own. That's messed. And it's very powerful, and it's very awesome. And of course, Rex asks the important question, why? So then they go and confront Krell. I personally wouldn't have asked him, I would have just shot him. I mean, you guys have a stun setting, you use it later. But anyways, Krell, of course, just breaks out the dual sabers, which is really awesome looking. I gotta admit, it's just in sheer cool factor. That's probably one of my favorite wielding styles, is dual-wielding dual sabers. And then, they have the cool scene, and they fight him, and blah, blah, blah. And, Dogma he hears from Krell's own mouth the truth of it, and there's something wonderfully perfect about the fact that Dogma is the one who kills Krell. The one person who is actually, on board with this the entire time is the one who does it. And you notice he still gets imprisoned at the end of this. Now, there's probably some actual military reasons for that, but I personally like to think that Dogma was willing to take the heat for killing the general just to spare his men, because of what he went through. Because of course Dogma would be the one most hurt by all this. He was the most loyal. Treachery doesn't hurt if you're expecting it. It doesn't hurt if you're ready for it. If you're someone who's truly loyal to someone else and they betray you, that hurts all the more. And that's why Dogma's story is one of the most interesting stories in this particular arc. But I want to talk about Krell briefly. First of all, of course, I like having Lee as a voice actor because he's a great voice actor. And he adds some wonderful emotion to the character, which is good because he needs it. Krell actually comes across as extremely one-note otherwise. But what I find interesting is that why don't more Jedi follow the same general path that Krell does? Think about this for a moment. 3 big factors here, okay? Now think about the Old Republic era. Think about how the Jedi are extremely dogmatic, and obviously I have a lot of beef with the old Jedi Council, but to be clear, none of that bias is in these statements. I'm just speaking from factual statement. They are very dogmatic. They have extreme rules which they don't violate for any reason, and it's all chakung, 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 right? So that's the first thing. They are extremely repressive. Don't feel, don't emote, don't care, blah, 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 blah. This is shown over and over and over in the prequel era, so I don't have to cite my examples here. And they also don't really have any experience in things like leadership, personal responsibility, or large-scale atrocity. Now take into account the 3 factors that this war has thrust upon the Jedi. The first is power. Political power, which is something the Jedi in general haven't really experienced. Yes, the High Jedi Council is used to political power because they are a very powerful political voice within the Republic. But the average Jedi, or any other Jedi, or even just regular Jedi Masters, those not on the Council, are not used to the idea of suddenly having all this power. There's a line Krell gives about, you're in control now, you're in power now. It feels good, doesn't it? It makes me wonder why we don't hear about more other Jedi who, regardless of the dark side, regardless of corruption, regardless of anything, just grow to really enjoy that sensation of being in charge. Because it's something so unique, so alien to them, and all of a sudden they're given it. And I can see people reacting to that in all sorts of different ways. Then we have the second factor, the war. The war is pretty bloody, pretty brutal, and pretty horrible. It's not nearly as devastating as it was posited back in the EU, but it is still extremely devastating with large-scale death and destruction, all that. That kind of thing will break normal people. Now, granted, Jedi are not normal people, but arguably I would say Jedi are more susceptible to this than other people because A, their connection to the Force, and B, they're not prepped for this. They're not trained for this. There's nothing that they've gone through that prepares them for dealing with the kind of emotional baggage these kind of atrocities and conflicts will bring. Which brings me, of course, to point 3, the dark side. The fact that there is a legitimate dark future that we're working towards, and that the dark side has started to permutate the entire galaxy, which is part of the point of this entire era of Star Wars, is that the dark side is becoming overwhelmingly out of balance, right? And in both interpretations of the Force, this is a true fact. Either it's too much dark and not balanced, or dark itself is the imbalance and there's too much dark. Both of these are still true. Ergo, more Jedi like Krell. He mentions, I have foreseen the future, and there's a new power on the rise. And all that's true. It's all truth. No, that's a lie. The Empire's coming. Palpatine is coming. I'm surprised more Jedi didn't see that future or feel that darkness and just couldn't deal with it, especially when compared with the other 2 points. This is yet another reason why, in my opinion, of course, the maneuvering the Jedi into positions of command within the Republic was a brilliant move on Palpatine's part. Because you're pretty much putting your greatest enemies into a position to fight effectively for you, and being assaulted by things they are not prepared to deal with. You won't get rid of all the Jedi that way. There are plenty of Jedi who deal with this just fine. But then there's Jedi like Krell. Anyways, that's all I got. Sorry for rambling so long. I just really wanted to talk about that concept. I hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Click.